Hello, everyone, friends. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that will surely take your breath away. And the plot, I assure you, will outshine any Hollywood drama. The story, as they say, perfectly illustrates how the car market works and what goes on during the buying and selling of cars. A real circus, but with wheels. And if anyone ever asked me to describe this market in 2 words, I would immediately send you a link to this video so everything would become clear right away. So, let's begin. In 2021, a young guy named James decided to buy a car. Not just any car, but a real luxury Porsche 911 Turbo from 2020, worth $120,000. The car was brand new, but like many others, he decided to take out a loan for it. The loan amount was $65,000. Everything was fine, the car was registered, life was good. But then disaster struck. The COVID-19 pandemic, lockdown, and James lost his job. Money went into the negative, and a whole bunch of problems with the loan started to pile up. And, as it often happens, problems don't come one at a time. A few months later, a tragedy strikes. James tragically loses his entire family. He's left alone, can't afford the funeral, and understandably, the battle for money begins. So, James decides to take out another loan. He takes out a new loan to cover the old debts, but as soon as the negative thoughts stop racing through his mind, he realizes that he can't handle the situation. And then, by some miracle, a brilliant idea comes to him. I'll sell my car, but not through the bank. I'll do it some other way. Without involving the bank, James decides to sell the car directly. He posts an ad for $55,000. Oh, how? He doesn't hide anything. He mentions that the car is under a loan and that he's selling it. Immediately, like dogs want a bone, car resellers jump on the ad. One of them calls and says, "Listen, we'll give you $50,000 in cash today. No questions, no delays." The reseller justifies this offer by saying, "You understand, the car's under a loan. We won't be able to sell it for a high price, so let's not waste time." James, tired and thinking, "At least I'll get some money," agrees. Everything seems settled. He shakes hands and says, "All right, come on over." The resellers arrive together, inspect the Porsche, and everything checks out. They fill out 2 sales contracts, one as it should be, and the other, well, not so much, just a blank one. So, in this blank contract, for some reason, they write $52,000 instead of $50,000. James asks, why the difference? To which they respond, "Didn't you know? This is how everyone does it. It's standard practice. Everyone does it this way." "Well, all right," says James, "if everyone does it that way." And during these discussions, they explain that the contract needs to be signed blank because the car has to be registered within 10 days and the resellers might not make it in time, and then there could be fines. James agrees again and signs the contract. A few days later, the resellers roll back the mileage on the car from 65,000 to 38,000 miles and post an ad saying that the car is now like new. But to make sure buyers don't get suspicious, they also changed the VIN to a fake one completely different to hide the fact that there's still a loan and a lien on the car. The new VIN differs by just 1 digit, but to the buyer, the difference is undetectable. This is where the real circus begins, because after a while, a buyer appears. A man calls and says he's looking for a car for his sister. He asks if the car has been in any accidents, if it's been repainted, who the owner is, and here's where the magic happens. The resellers, of course, answer all questions as if there are no hidden issues. They say, "Yes, I take care of it. Everything is fine. I wipe it down every week. Change the oil." The man arrives with his son and nephew to inspect the car. The resellers meet them and introduce themselves as the owner's good friends. But in reality, this is just another trick. One of the resellers, who introduced himself as Sasha, explains that he's just showing the car. If everything checks out, they'll go to the actual owner, who will explain all the details. They inspect the car, and everyone is happy. Oh, how convenient. Next, they go to Sam, who the second reseller, who plays the role of the owner. He greets the buyers and says, "Yes, I've taken care of this car like a member of my family. I really didn't want to sell it, but I have to." They check the vehicle passport, inspect the car, and then head to a service center where its clean status is confirmed. Everything seems fine. In fact, even at the very beginning, they'd already ordered a report on the car, which came back completely clean. No issues with loans, no liens. How convenient. All the paperwork is in hand, and no one has any idea that something is not quite right with the car. The man calls his sister and tells her that the car has been checked and everything is fine. She comes over and they meet at the service center where Sam, who by the way isn't Sam at all, signs the sales contract. This, by the way, is the same blank contract that the real James signed a couple of weeks ago. It's simple, the keys are handed over, the money is paid, and everyone is happy. Well, not everyone, of course. A few weeks later, after the buyers have registered the car and started using it, they find out that it's still under a lien with the bank. How is this possible? The bank demands the car back through the court, and a long legal battle begins. The buyers decide to file a counterclaim against the bank, arguing that they are good faith purchases. However, the court rules against them, and the car is taken at auction to pay off James's loan. It seems like a standard situation that hundreds of people face every day. But no, friends, this story is not as simple as it seems. The buyers, not agreeing with the outcome, file a report with the police. An investigation begins, and the police track down the resellers, opening a case. James, the actual owner of the car, actively cooperates with the police, providing phone records and giving testimony. As a result, the resellers, who thought they had easily made some money, end up under investigation. The police carry out all the necessary expert evaluations, check handwriting, conduct confrontations, and here's the interesting part. All the witnesses confirm that they bought the car from the resellers, not from James. Everything points to them. In court, the resellers tried to justify themselves, claiming they didn't know about the loan. But that didn't help, and the court delivers a guilty verdict. As a result, the resellers are sentenced to a year and a half of forced labor, and the buyer files a lawsuit for $64,000 to recover her money. The resellers, of course, deny their guilt during the investigation and in court, but the evidence speaks for itself. And so the court delivers its verdict. The resellers are sentenced to a year and a half of forced murder and are ordered to return the money for the car. James, on his part, decides that this issue is finally settled, and his credit problems are resolved. The bank got its money back by selling the car at auction, and James, although he went through many trials, comes out of the situation clean. But the story doesn't end there. After serving their sentence, the resellers file a lawsuit against James, claiming that he deceived them. They argue that they didn't know about the loan. Interesting, right? But this lawsuit also doesn't succeed. The court rejects it. Everything they tried to prove had already been disproven in the criminal case, and this fact was reflected in the conviction. Let's ask ourselves, what needs to be done to avoid situations like this in the car market? On a global level, there are two important points to consider. First, there needs to be mandatory registration of the sales contract with identity verification. This will help prevent people from quickly rewriting contracts on the fly or pretending to be someone else. No more clever schemes. Second, the penalties for identity fraud and the use of someone else's personal data must be more severe. It should be a criminal offense, not just an administrative violation. In some countries, using someone else's data is a serious crime, and there should be no exceptions here. Moreover, to protect yourself when buying or selling a car, it's important to follow a few simple but crucial rules. First, always check the original passport of the seller. If the person refuses to show the passport or suggests copying it from their phone, don't trust them. Go home, come back with the real document. If you've ordered a report on the car in advance, make sure all the data matches. Check the VIN and compare it with the documents and the actual car. And most importantly, never sign blank documents. Make sure the contract is signed in multiple copies and don't let anyone keep blank forms with your signature. All of this will help minimize the risks and protect you from fraudsters and resellers who might try to exploit your trust. Now you definitely know how to protect yourself when dealing with cars.